وكفى والصلاة والسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى خصوصا على أفضلهم وخاتم النبيين محمد الأمين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد. We begin with Allah's blessed name. We praise Him and we glorify Him as He ought to be praised and glorified. And we pray for peace and for blessings on all His noble messengers, and in particular on the last of them all, the blessed Prophet Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. As we greet you from the city of Bradford in Britain with Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And can someone kindly bring me a copy of Gold Dinar? Our subject today is the Gold Dinar and Silver Dirham, Islam and the future of money. And someone has very, very intelligently brought a dinar. Here is a dinar, a gold dinar, and he brought a dirham, but this looks like a 3 or 4 dirhams. Yeah. Okay, made of silver. Good. It does not matter who has minted the coin. It does not matter what he has written on the coin. The market in Islam will accept all gold coins and silver coins. And we will have offices in the market who will do two things. Who will check the weight of the coin, and number 2, check the purity of the coin when you approach the market. Okay? So now, is a gold dinar in the Quran? Has Allah spoken about it in the Quran? You're looking worried now, aren't you? Your heart is shaking a little bit. Is the silver dirham in the Quran? Has Allah mentioned the silver dirham? بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ومن أهل الكتاب إن تأمنه بقنطار يؤديه إليك. And amongst the Ahlul Kitab, there are those who, if you give him a quintar, which is a big treasure, and ask him to keep it safely, when you want it returned, he will give it back to you. وَمِنْهُ مَنْ تَأْمَنْهُ بِدِينَارٍ وَلَا يُؤَدِّهِ إِلَيْكَ. And amongst the Ahlul Kitab, there are those who, if you give him a dinar and you ask him to keep it safely, when you want it back, he would not return it to you. إِلَّا مَا دُمْتَ عَلَيْهِ قَائِمًا. Unless you stand and you pound and pound and pound, give it back to me. ذَلِكَ بأنهم قالوا ليس علينا في الأميين سبيل ويقولون على الله الكذب وهم يعلمون. This is because they say, we don't have any moral obligations to you cockroaches. We are the chosen people of the Lord God. The law for us is different from the law for you. We can rip you off, but they tell a lie against us. This verse of the Quran gives us the word dinar as a gold coin. When they took Yusuf alayhi salam from out of the well, they were surprised when they pulled up the bucket. They took him to Egypt. وَشَرَوْهُ بِثَمَنٍ بَخْسٍ دَرَاهِمَ مَعْدُودًا. They sold him for a few measly dirhams. So here we have the word dirham, and dirham used for buying and selling. This is the Quran. When you go to the hadith and you go to the seerah, there is an abundance of information and evidence that this is the money which was used. Now then, I want to begin the lecture with an event which occurred in the life of the Prophet ﷺ. I have a problem that I have to speak slow. I have to get you to think, and yet I have to finish the lecture in time. Bilal radiallahu ta'ala anhu once came to the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam and offered him some dates. The Prophet looked at the dates. He said, Bilal, these are very high quality dates. Where did you get them? Now in those days the measure of weight was called the mud and the sa, but today we can use kilograms. So Bilal said, O Messenger of Allah, I had 2 kilograms of inferior quality dates, and I exchanged them for this 1 kilogram of superior quality dates. Those inferior quality dates were worth probably 5 pounds a kilo, and this one was worth 10 pounds a kilo. So in value, it was a good exchange. This was worth over 10 pounds and this is worth 10 pounds, okay? So he exchanged 2 kilograms of inferior quality dates for 1 kilogram of superior quality dates. Now let me introduce you to riba. The very last revelation to come in the Quran before the Prophet died was a revelation in Surah Al-Baqarah where he declared war on riba. War on riba. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ cursed, la'na, all 4. And he said they're all equally guilty. The one who takes riba, the one who gives riba, the one who records the transaction and the 2 witnesses, and say, all equally guilty. He said riba is comprised of 70 different parts. The smallest part, substitute. The smallest part of riba is equivalent to marrying your own mother. I don't have to continue. We have a booklet at the back there, the importance of the prohibition of riba, and there you'll find it. Give me a copy, please. You'll find all the information on the importance of this subject. He said 1 dirham of riba is equivalent to committing zina 36 times. Yeah, this is it. The importance of the prohibition of riba. Okay? And this is my book on the gold dinar and silver dirham. So now, riba is a terrible thing. So when Bilal said, O Messenger of Allah, this is what I did. I exchanged the 2 kilograms for 1. He said, Bilal, this is the essence of riba. What you should have done was to sell the 2 kilograms, take that money and buy the 1 kilogram. That would be halal. But an exchange of dates for dates that was unequal, 2 for 1, was haram, was riba. You are lucky in Bradford. I don't have the time to question you. You're lucky. So I have to answer the question. All right? Why was it haram to have an unequal exchange of dates? Why was it riba? The answer is to be found in a very important hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. This is what he said. Gold for gold, meaning if a transaction involves an exchange of gold for gold, or silver for silver, which means if a transaction involves an exchange of silver for silver, wheat for wheat, barley for barley, dates for dates, which is this transaction, salt for salt. It has to be equal for equal. You can't have 2 on this side and 1 on this side. If you have 2 kilograms on this side, you must have 2 on this side as well. Gold, silver, wheat, barley, dates, salt. It must be equal for equal. It must be hand to hand, means it cannot be a credit transaction. It must be a cash transaction. Otherwise, he said, it's riba. What is there which is common to all 6? Gold, silver, wheat, barley, dates, and so I tell you, you are lucky in Bradford. I don't have the time to question you. What is common to all 6 is that they were all used as money. That gold and silver were used as money, but sometimes there could be a shortage of gold and silver coins in the market. In such an instance, what would they do? In such an instance, you can use wheat as money, you can use barley as money, you can use dates as money, you can use salt as money. In other words, if you had a shortage of gold and silver in the market, you would look to the market to see what item of food consumption which is non-perishable. It has a shelf life, not like mangoes, cindri, and it gets rotten. It has a shelf life. It is non-perishable. It can last for a long time. And it is in abundant supply in the market. And you use that as money. So in Medina, obviously, if there was a shortage of gold and silver, they will use dates as money. But what about if you're in Java, in Indonesia, and you have a shortage of gold and silver? What would you use as money? Anybody? Rice is correct. The rice where you take off the paddy or the husk, or the rice with the husk? With the husk. It's called paddy. With the husk. That's the rice you use, not the one that you take off the husk. And what about if you're in Cuba? And you know that Fidel Castro stopped smoking cigars. You know that, don't you? So what would you use in Cuba as money? Anybody?
Sugar.
Sugar is correct. All right, don't answer them anymore. Sugar is correct. So now then we have a definition of what is money in Islam. Here is the definition. Money in Islam is either gold and silver or items of food consumption which are in abundant supply in the market and which have a shelf life. That's the definition of money in Islam. From this follows now the first implication, that money in Islam is always money with intrinsic value, not fictitious value. Right? Not fictitious value. The value of the money is not in the hands of a man named George Soros. The value of the money is not in Wall Street. The value of the money is inside the money. The value of the money is not determined by the stock market. The value of the money is inside the money. This is intrinsic value. That's the definition of money in Islam. And so now, why did he say it's haram and riba? Why? Bilal, this is the essence of riba. Why? Come on, somebody. No, you don't answer anymore. Come on, somebody. Yes. Because? Because dates were used as money. That's why. Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu exchanged one camel for 4. This was an adult and these were baby camels. Nothing haram in it, nothing riba in it. Why? Because you cannot use animals as money. So you can have an unequal exchange of camels. But because dates were used as money, it is prohibited to have an unequal exchange of dates. Why? Because you will open the door for the moneylender. He will give you 1 kilogram of dates and he says you have to return 2 kilograms. So it's a loan with 100% interest. That's why it was prohibited. If you allow the money to be lent on interest, where is the harm in it? What is there wrong in lending money on interest? Allah gives 2 answers in the Quran. In Surah Al-Baqarah he says, ذَلِكَ بِأَنَّهُمْ قَالُوا إِنَّمَا الْبَيْعُ مِثْلُ الرِّبَا. That riba, lending money on interest, is another form of business. It's business. But then Allah says, وَحَلَّ اللَّهُ الْبَيْعَ وَحَرَّمَ الرِّبَا. But Allah has made business halal, but riba haram. So he's offered us a contrast between business and riba. What is the difference between a business transaction and a riba transaction? Answer: in a business transaction, you always take a chance. You assume a risk. You can either make a profit or you can suffer a loss. That is a business transaction. Brother Khalil? MashaAllah, MashaAllah, MashaAllah. His son is married to my daughter.
We're waiting for the first.
Yes, MashaAllah. MashaAllah, yes, good. MashaAllah, okay. Yeah. Alaikum salam, yeah. Alaikum salam, yeah. MashaAllah, Bismillah. Yeah. Let me take off this, it's too hot.
It's too hot, yeah.
The definition of a business transaction is that you can either make a profit or you can suffer a loss. That's a business transaction. When you embrace risk, R-I-S-K, then Allah can take from some and give to others. It is His function to distribute wealth and to redistribute wealth, so that wealth would circulate through the economy. If wealth does not circulate through the economy, and wealth circulates only amongst the wealthy, then that is not only a sick economy, but a recipe for oppression. From the day that Pakistan was born to this day, the economy of Pakistan has been the same. You can change governments, it makes no difference. The bitter reality is that the economy of Pakistan, like all the rest of the world, is one in which wealth no longer circulates through the economy. It is not the function of the government to enter into the economy to redistribute wealth. As the socialist economy says, this was Zulfikar Ali Bhutto when he came with Islamic socialism. This is Hugo Chavez and Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela. These are all the socialists. There was Sukarno also in Indonesia. That it is the government which must intervene in the economy to try to get wealth to circulate in the economy. If you do that, you, number one, you corrupt the economy. Number two, you open the doors for corruption. Yes. And so, Allah has made halal, business halal, and made riba haram. Ahallallahu al-bay'a wa harrama riba. You say that lending money on interest is just another form of business. We say no. The Quran says no. When you lend money on interest, you make sure that you are in a risk-free transaction. Come rain or sunshine, you get your pound of flesh. And in order to protect your investment, when you make a loan on interest, you make sure you have something called collateral for a mortgage. That if you don't repay, I'll seize your property. So it's a risk-free transaction. Come rain or sunshine, you're getting a profit. No possibility of a loss. Okay? So Allah said, this is not business, because when you lend money on interest and the borrower signs the agreement that he agrees to pay the interest, you block the door for Allah to intervene, to take from some and give to others. I'm not going to do that. Inna Allah la yughayyiru ma bi qawmin hatta yughayyiru ma bi anfusihim. Surely Allah will not intervene to change your condition, no matter how desperate it may become, unless and until you take the initiative using Allah's guidance to change your own condition. So if you shut the door for Allah, He is not going to open it. So from the day that Pakistan was born to this day, no one has ever attempted to ensure that you have an economy that Allah has ordained. He says in the Quran that He is distributing wealth like this, for example in inheritance and so on. كَيْ لَا يَكُونَ الدَّوْلَةَ بَيْنَ الْأَغْنِيَاءِ مِنْكُمْ. I'm doing this so that wealth should not circulate only amongst the wealthy. But then Dajjal came. And look what Dajjal has done. Before we turn to Dajjal, I told you yesterday that the young men fled into the cave. And they slept for how long? How much? 300 years. So when Allah woke them up, they were naturally hungry. And they took the money that they had to go and buy food. We said that money has three different functions. The first is a medium of exchange, to buy and sell. The second is a measure of value. What is the value of this book and what's the value of a haircut? And the third is a store of value. That if you work for a whole month and you get your salary, and with this salary you can buy a camel. But you put your salary in a box, and 5 or 10 years later you take out the salary should still be able to buy the camel, provided that demand and supply remain constant. Store of value. And so long as we use dinar and dirham, it always functions successfully as money. In Surah Al-Kahf, there was a man who was a believer and he was dying, he's leaving orphans behind. He couldn't find anybody who was honest who could leave the money with him. So he dug a hole. He buried the money. And he built a wall. You know about that? So money is something that you could put in a hole. You can bury it. And you could build a wall over it. That's money. And when Dawood alayhi salam, you know, with the slingshot and he killed Jalut, Goliath, then Talut became the king. In English they call him Saul. But the Israelite people were very annoyed. How could you appoint him as king and ruler when he doesn't even have a kilogram of money? A sa'. I'm using the normal, the new one, kilogram. So money in the Quran is something you can weigh. It has weight. But all of this is new to you because nobody teaches this subject. All of this is new to you. It's in the Quran. Money in the Quran has weight, kuch wazan hai. Money in the Quran, you can bury it. Money in the Quran after 300 years, it still keeps its value. I told you when I went to study in Pakistan, 1964, to take the bus from North Nizamabad to Sadr, and we had to pay chawanni. Chawanni is 1/4 of a rupee. And to go and come back was a tanni, half of a rupee. And $1 was worth 1 rupee and 75 paise. That was 1964 when I went as a student. I wonder what happened to the Pakistani rupee since then. Huh? Okay. So now we leave that part of the subject, and I'm introducing you now to someone named Dajjal. And if you find any anger in me, it's because I am angry. I have a lot of anger in me, and sometimes I cannot contain that anger. Because I've been teaching this subject for 25 years, and your Maulanas and your Muftis and your Shuyukh would not listen to me. And they all condemn me, all of them. They've closed the doors of the masjid to me, but thank Allah, the angel will come one day and take me away. Thank Allah for that, and I'll leave this world to them. I will leave this world to them. Those who are closing the doors of the masjid on me, I'm teaching what they cannot teach. 25 years is a long time. Let me introduce you to Dajjal. Yesterday I introduced you to Dajjal on the secular state. And when you go voting in elections, you validate that secular state with a shirk. Nobody teaches that. Dajjal, first of all, he has Gog and Magog working for him. The world of Islamic scholarship sorrowfully so believe that Gog and Magog will only appear in the world after Nabi Isa alayhi salam comes. They are pathetically misguided. Gog and Magog work for Dajjal. And you'll be able to recognize Gog and Magog because they are the ones who are going to bring the Jews back to Jerusalem to reclaim it as their own 2,000 years after Allah had expelled them. My book, Jerusalem in the Quran, was written 22 years ago to explain this. وَحَرَامٌ عَلَى قَرْيَةٍ أَهْلَكْنَاهَا أَنَّهُ لَا يَرْجِعُونَ. A town which Allah destroyed, expelled the people, placed a ban on them. They can never return to reclaim this town as their own. Hatta إِذَا فُتِحَتْ يَأْجُوجُ وَمَأْجُوجُ وَهُمْ مِنْ كُلِّ حَدَبٍ يَنْسِلُونَ. They will never be able to return to this town to reclaim it as their own until something happens. Listen carefully. Something happens only once in history. Only once. that Gog and Magog will spread out all over the world with their indestructible power. Only Allah can destroy them. Hadith al-Qudsi. And when they have taken control of power all over the world, then Gog and Magog will bring these people back to Jerusalem. Have the Jews returned to Jerusalem? Yes. So who brought them back? This civilization. Modern Western civilization brought them back. So Gog and Magog are located in this civilization. So when they went all over the world and they colonized the world, they never decolonized until they had put in place institutions to ensure that the colonies will become carbon copies of the modern West. Let me repeat that, in case some of you are sleeping. When they went out and they conquered the world and they colonized the rest of the world, they never decolonized unless and until they had put in place institutions to ensure that the colonies will become carbon copies of the modern West. The modern West had already started printing paper as money. The Bank of England started it. It was a Ponzi scheme. It was a bogus scheme to make some people more and more rich, richer and richer and richer and richer, and rip off the people. That's what the Bank of England started it. But by the time of the Second World War, they were ready to now establish it as an institution in which all of mankind must now become a part of it and submit to it. So there was a conference in upstate New York, a place called Bretton Woods. And it will do you good, those of you who have an interest in knowledge, to do some reading about that conference, Bretton Woods. There were two major actors. Britain, which was led by John Maynard Keynes, and the United States, which was led by someone named White. So far, up to the Second World War, the one paper which ruled the whole world was the British pound. The British pound. And Britain was the financial capital of the world. Sorry, London. The financial capital of the world. Any country wanted a loan is to London, they would come for it. So they printed paper and they started lending the paper on interest. For some time there was a merry-go-round with gold standard, that from time to time they will dance a dance that we show the pound is backed by gold and the pound is not backed by gold and so on. A merry-go-round. A nice piece of history to read. Until at Bretton Woods, Britain had to concede that a day like a year had come to an end and a day like a month had commenced. This is what our Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, that when Dajjal is released, he will live on earth for 40 days. One day like a year. He didn't say one day that would be a year, he said one day like a year. So a long period of time. One day like a month, a shorter period of time. One day like a week, a brief period of time. وَسَائِرُ أَيَّامِهِ كَأَيَّامِكُمْ, and all his days, meaning all the rest of his days, like your days. We got an artist in Malaysia to design this cover. And you see the three circles there. And one day like a year, one day like a month, one day like a week. When Dajjal was in his first stage, in the day like a year, Pax Britannica emerged. Britain is a ruling state. And the sterling pound became the international currency ruling the world. Why? Because we're no longer using gold and silver. And then came the second stage when Pax Americana replaced Pax Britannica. And the US dollar replaced the sterling pound, and that occurred at Bretton Woods. And then came the International Monetary Fund as a result of Bretton Woods. And the Articles of Agreement of the International Monetary Fund did something astonishing. I don't know where our Maulanas and Muftis were when this happened. Maybe eating biryani and going to sleep. Yes, you can't criticize me for my language at all. Don't attempt to do it. Because I know my subject. I know my subject. I've studied it. So if I speak like this about your Maulanas and Muftis and Shuyukh, I have the right to do it. You can't stop me. Where were they? When the International Monetary Fund was established and the Articles of Agreement of the International Monetary Fund prohibited the use of gold as money. Where were our scholars? That was 1944. Not a word was heard. Silence. You even had books written by eminent muftis. I won't mention the name because many people will be embarrassed, declaring that the paper money is halal. If I mention the names, you'll be embarrassed, some of you. The International Monetary Fund prohibited the use of gold as money. Why? Answer? You cannot bring bogus money in the market and succeed if gold is in the market. So they had to prohibit the use of gold in order for their bogus money to succeed. Okay? And only one currency was chosen to be backed by gold, in the sense that the US dollar, the price of the US dollar was fixed at 35 US dollars for 1 ounce of gold. I have cut out a part of the subject already which will have taken 10 minutes. I have to keep cutting. So under international law, once this monetary system was established, the United States was legally obliged. Any central bank that brings US dollars, the United States is legally obliged to redeem those US dollars for gold at the rate of $35 for 1 ounce of gold. No other currency was halal. No other country had any link with gold, none. Only one, the US dollar. So at least the US dollar had a fig leaf of credibility. But no other currency had any fig leaf of credibility. One man in the world of Islam, only one, recognized what was happening. Who was he? Ahmad Sukarno. Ahmad Sukarno. Indonesia became an independent state just about the same time as Pakistan. But Ahmad Sukarno called the Indonesian ulama And he asked them, we become an independent state now, what will we do with this money? The rupiah, which is paper. The Indonesian ulama told him that this paper will be halal only if it functions as a check. That anyone who has the paper can go and cash it. And of course, what is written in the paper has to be fixed. You can't change it. So you must have enough gold and silver to be able to redeem all the paper. Guess what they did to Sukarno? Guess what they did to Sukarno when Sukarno talked about this? By the time of 1971, a tremendous challenge had come to the United States from a statesman the likes of which the world of Islam never produced. A man named General Charles de Gaulle. He had the vision and he had the courage. And he stood up in the French National Assembly that none of us can do in any parliament today. We're scared. They're there. And he declared that this monetary system is unjust. It's favoring the United States. And he then said, we are now going to redeem our US dollars for gold. So guess what they did? Like what they did to Imran Khan, they did it to him as well. But the successors of de Gaulle continued to take US dollars to the United States and demand gold. Until 1971, the United States declared, we cannot continue, this is too dangerous. Because we printed too much paper and we don't have the gold for it. What you should do is to send the United States government to jail. We can't do that. So what Richard Nixon did was to say, we gave our word, but we don't have to keep our word. Allah says in the beginning of Surah Al-Ma'idah, Awfu bil-uqud, keep your word. When you make a contract, fulfill your contract. And he said, we gave our word, but we don't have to keep our word. So from today, the United States will no longer redeem US dollars for gold. And from 1971 until 1973, the US dollar remained in no man's land. It could collapse at any time. Today, once again, the US dollar can collapse at any time. Now then, our Prophet ﷺ prophesied. He said that the river Euphrates will uncover a mountain of gold, the metal gold. And people will fight for that gold. And 99 out of every 100 who fight for that gold, for that mountain of gold, will be killed. So this is not conventional warfare. This has to be warfare using weapons of mass destruction to kill 99% of combatants. But the believers must not touch that gold. But it's halal to touch gold. Completely halal to touch. Why? He said the believers must not touch that gold. Why? I understood that the Prophet ﷺ was giving us an mutashabihah, something which has to be interpreted. But those who say, no, we believe that the mountain of gold is going to come out from under the river, I say, no problem, we should not have any boxing match. You just find a comfortable sofa and wait for the mountain of gold to come out from underneath the river. And that's what they're doing now. They're sitting on the sofa waiting for it to happen. I say, no, this has to be interpreted. And exactly what the Prophet prophesied happened in 1974. Because the US dollar is in no man's land. Since Richard Nixon reneged on redeeming US dollars for gold. We have any bankers here today? No banker, okay. What he did in 1974 was that they had control of both sides of the war, because the Soviet Union was playing a game with them, collaborating with the West. And the war took place in 1974, the Arab-Israeli war, planned in advance, with the Zionists on both sides of the war to ensure that the war goes to a draw. King Faisal, rahimahullah, had warned the West after the war in '67 that we will impose an oil boycott on you. And as soon as the war started, that's what he did. And that is what they wanted him to do. But he didn't realize that. Oil was selling at $3 a barrel when the war started. And from $3 a barrel, it rose to $12 a barrel, which means 400% increase. And the Arabs are now reaping huge amount of wealth. Kissinger was waiting for that. He then flew to Riyadh to meet with King Faisal and to explain to him, what you're getting now is peanuts. You'll get much, much more than this. All you have to do is one thing. In order for our money not to remain in no man's land, in order for the US dollar to survive, survival required that there must be a demand for the money in the market. So long as there is a demand, the US dollar will survive. So he said, I want you to sell your oil for nothing else than US dollars, so there will be a demand for the US dollar in the market. And then Saudi Arabia got the other oil producing countries to come on board, and then OPEC came on board. And the US dollar survived, and mashallah, survived very well, and flew very high, higher than ever before. What happened was, an ocean of oil underneath the river had begun to function as a mountain of gold. If you are convinced that my interpretation of the hadith is correct, fine. But you should not accept my view unless you are convinced that it is correct. No one had ever interpreted the hadith this way before. So who is this man? Who is this man? That's why there is a universal condemnation of Imran Hosein. They despise me. The petrodollar was born. And since 1974, paper money has graduated to the petrodollar. And once the petrodollar is functioning, the modern Western world will remain rich and go richer and richer. But Pax Americana cannot last forever. Dajjal has a third stage, which is a day like a week, when, in my opinion, a Pax Judaica has to replace Pax Americana. So we have to anticipate that a new monetary system is to come, which will replace the present monetary system. And we are actually living through that event today. We are witnessing the incremental movement, which will eventually result in the collapse of the monetary system as developed by the West. Russia is challenging it, and China is challenging it. And where is Pakistan? India is challenging it. Where is the world of Islam? South Africa is challenging it. Brazil is challenging it. They came together several years ago to establish something called BRICS. BRICS. And the purpose of BRICS was to create another monetary system. I met with Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, who was the former president, and we had a chat in Tehran. And he said to me, he said, Sheikh, I went to Moscow and I spoke to Putin on this subject. So the idea came from us. That's what Mahmoud said to me. And so now we see that Russia has said to unfriendly countries, you want oil? You got to pay for it in rubles. And they can't do it directly because it will be too embarrassing. So they're buying the oil now through the back door. And as the demand for the ruble increases in the market, the ruble is becoming stabilized. It's a challenge to the petrodollar monetary system. China has said to Saudi Arabia a few years ago, we are prepared, China is Saudi Arabia's biggest customer for oil. We are prepared to buy your oil from you and pay for the oil in Chinese yuan. And after we pay you in the Chinese yuan, then there's a second transaction, that we will redeem the yuan for gold. So China is not violating the laws of the IMF. Saudi Arabia realized that if I ever do this, goodbye to the US dollar, if this happens. So long as Trump was the president, Saudi Arabia never walked down that road. But during the elections, Biden spoke very harshly against Mohammed bin Salman, declaring that he's responsible for Adnan Khashoggi's murder. So Mohammed bin Salman now is at war with Biden. So when Biden called him on the phone, that's a bad sign. And so now China and Saudi Arabia are negotiating at this time to implement this plan for China to buy oil with yuan and then redeem it for gold. And so I have some bad news for you. The mountain of gold is about to collapse. They don't want it to collapse. If it collapses, there will be civil war in the United States because all Americans have guns. They cannot afford it to collapse, because if the US dollar collapses, all the other money in the world will collapse. There will be chaos in the world. So what to do? The best way to be able to manage the collapse of the monetary system is to have a big war that will cover it. So while the US armed forces don't want to fight, the British armed forces don't want to fight, the inner group inside, Gog and Magog, they want the Great War. And when the Great War takes place, the whole monetary system will collapse. And they will not be blamed for it. What comes after? What comes after? What comes after is that Israel will now seek to replace the United States as the next ruling state in the world, which indicates that modern Western civilization will be defeated in the war. And what is left of modern Western civilization after this war will not play any significant role on the stage of the world. I wish I had the time to explain to you what Allah has done for Russia, explained from the Quran, I wish I had the time to do that. But Russia will survive, and so too will China, because they're very big countries. But the modern West is compact, tight compact. They will be destroyed. And so what happens after the Great War and the conquest of Constantinople is that Israel will now make a bid to replace the United States as the ruling state in the world. And Pax Judaica will last for only a short period of time. What will be the money that will succeed this monetary system? Answer: Dajjal wants to be recognized as the Messiah. Every Jew will recognize this money is bogus. So Dajjal has to reach a stage where he has valid money. Only then would he appear in person and declare, I am the Messiah. So during the last stage, a day like a week, when Dajjal has not as yet appeared in human form, all of mankind will have one currency. It will be an electronic money. If you don't have the wireless internet, you could probably have cables. And the Israeli central bank, or a central bank controlled by the Zionists, will control all the money in the world. What will Allah do to the Maulanas and Muftis and Shuyukh of this Ummah who have the Book of Allah? What will Allah do to them? And the one man who is teaching this subject, they want to destroy me. I'm the one man who is teaching it. Yes, there are some others who are talking about Dinar and Dirham, but I'm the only one who's putting it in the context of Akhirul Zaman. So when a day like a week is finished, and the conquest of Constantinople has taken place, and we have returned Hagia Sophia to the Orthodox Christian world. That's why I'm traveling to Armenia, and I'm traveling to Greece on this travel. Then Dajjal will appear in person, in human form. And what will money be at that time? Gold and silver is correct. Israel has already made gold and silver legal tender. Already. So at that time when Dajjal appears in person, it's very simple now. That the money which will be used in the market for buying and selling would be dinar and dirham. They might call it by another name. I hope I'm not alive to see that, because the shame and the disgrace will be too much for me to face. the shame and the disgrace that they have brought dinar and dirham in the market. And we can't even take the first step on the road. I advised the government of Pakistan when Imran Khan was there. I said the road forward is to declare, get it put in law, that dinar and dirham are legal tender in Pakistan. Meaning, any laborer could demand that his salary be paid in dinar and dirham. The rupee will remain in the market. But as you bring dinar and dirham into the market, don't ask me where you'll get the dinar and dirham from, because that's what businessmen are for. From the time there's a demand in the market, the businessmen will be scurrying all over to supply. That's what business is about. You don't have to worry where you're going to come from. From the time you bring the dinar and dirham in the market, your wife will certainly realize this is real money. This money doesn't leak. And she'll wring your ears if you don't ask for your salary in dinar and dirham. Okay? So the demand for dinar and dirham will be constantly rising in Pakistan. And as the demand rises, the rupee will constantly fall until nobody will want the rupee. So instead of you banning the rupee will collapse by itself automatically, which is more sensible. That's what Pakistan has to do. But if you do that, you'll be in violation of the Articles of Agreement of the International Monetary Fund. So what to do? This is shirk, what the IMF has done. To make haram what Allah has made halal, that is shirk. And when we accept it, then we are in the shirk. It was only Ahmad Sukarno, only one man, who took Indonesia out of the IMF and took Indonesia out of the UN. And up to today, everybody's saying he's a fool. And I say, honor that man. Honor him, because he's the only one. Hugo Chavez in Venezuela, he also understood what was happening. And he tried to take Venezuela out of the IMF, but they had put so many ropes, it was not possible to take Venezuela out of the IMF. So our future lies in getting a leader who will declare gold and silver, dinar and dirham, to be legal tender. If you want to launch a movement, this is a movement you have to launch. And once you launch that movement, you can't remain in the IMF anymore. So you've got to bite the bullet. And I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may grant that some of you here in Bradford may eventually emerge as scholars who will teach this subject. Where is Mutahir? There we are. He's a graduate of 2 Darul Ulooms here, mashallah, he's my student. We have Imam Isa Wood here, another scholar. I don't know how many others we have here. That Allah may produce these scholars, because tomorrow I'll be gone. And they may struggle to bring back the money which is in the Quran and the money which is in the Sunnah, the gold dinar and silver dirham. This is my lecture for today, and we now have a little time for question and answers on this subject, and then yesterday's subject. Bismillah. Can someone get me this hot? Yeah, get it hot for me. When the question and answer session is over, you can then get my books at the back and bring them up to me to be autographed. If you want your name inscribed, my hearing is declining. So instead of you having to tell me 5 times what's your name, just write it out on a piece of paper. Yes?
Recently, Sri Lanka, the economy has collapsed, so they have declared bankruptcy as well. What are your views on that? How?
Sri Lanka declared bankruptcy, yes. The sky has not fallen down. Sri Lanka declared bankruptcy. The sky has not fallen down. But if Pakistan declares bankruptcy, oh no, that will be tremendously dangerous for them. Why? Because many other Islamic countries, Muslim countries, will then do the same. And their system will collapse. Islam permits bankruptcy. Because if you have a debt and you cannot repay it, you cannot remain a slave. You cannot remain a slave. But when you declare bankruptcy, whatever wealth you have, whatever, you don't hide your wealth, must then be sold to pay your creditors. And when that is done, you have nothing, and whatever is left of the debt is now written off. This can be done for individuals. You can't do this for a state. Okay? So it's a difficult subject for me to offer any comment because it's the first time we have a country declaring bankruptcy. So I prefer not to offer any comments until I could study this. It's not my subject really. Yeah.
Sheikh, on the question of establishing halal currency for the Islamic world, you mentioned a number of honourable students that are taking up the mantle to progress the subject. But is it not a fact that this whole the foundation of the haram system is being maintained through power, through military power, through political power, right? That is what is maintaining it. Were it not for those two factors, it itself would crumble because it's hollow. So my question is, are we waiting to acquire that power? And have we not arrived at the juncture where only divine intervention can bring us that power?
No, at all. It's not being maintained primarily by military power and political power. A significant part of the process of maintaining the system is transforming us into sheep and cattle. Yes, transforming us into sheep and cattle. And if I ask the question, why was it haram and riba for Bilal to exchange 2 kilograms for 1? Nobody can answer that question. That's our pathetic state. What is money in the Quran? Nobody knows. That's our pathetic state. If we had unity in our ranks, how much power would we have? But we are Brelvi, and we are Deobandi, and they hate each other. And we are Ahl Hadith, and we are Wahhabi, and we are Salafi, and this and that and the other. And we all fighting with each other, boxing with each other. I am the only one on the right path, all of them are wrong. I am the only one on the right path, all of them. And Allah says, وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. They could not have succeeded as they have succeeded if we had not been so divided amongst our ranks. We are not producing scholars anymore. Our Darul Uloom declares that knowledge is a package which is already sealed. Dars-e-Nizami. And all that we have to do is to transfer that package from one generation to another. There is no critical thinking involved anymore in Islamic education. None. There's no new knowledge to come. Anyone who comes and interprets the Quran something new that we never heard before, that's a dangerous man. How can you produce a people who could stand up to the West and challenge this monetary system as Charles de Gaulle did, when we cannot produce scholars of Islam? Why am I traveling in my old age? One solitary voice, I'm planting the seeds wherever I go, so that tomorrow we can have a new generation of scholars of Islam, different from what is emerging from your Darul Uloom. Huh? Is Pakistan producing that kind of scholarship? Can your Darul Uloom produce one Iqbal? One Iqbal? So the reason why the West has been able to successful, yes, military power is part of it. Political power is part of it. But an important part of it is our own miserable scholarship. I'm the only one teaching the subject. And the way they respond to me, they block the doors. They close the doors on the masjid on me. But thank Allah for the internet, that I'm able to go over the heads of the masajid and the Darul Uloom and all of them, and reach the people. I just spent 5 months in Pakistan, and I found an enormous number of young people in Pakistan were already attracted to what I was teaching. So it's not hopeless. Our Prophet said, मेरी उम्मत बारिश जैसे, मैं ये नहीं जानता हूँ क्या पहले बारिश बेहतर या आखिरी. My ummah is like the rain. I do not know which shower is better, the first or the last. So I say there is a last shower of scholarly rain which is to come. It's not going to come from Afghanistan. Afghanistan knows how to fight. Afghanistan doesn't know yet how to think. And I've traveled extensively in the world of Islam. And the best place, the most fertile place I have found for that last shower of scholarly rain is Pakistan. It's come from Pakistan. But it won't come from the Darul Uloom. It'll come from Iqbal. Iqbal was most powerful as a poet. Allah gave him that poetry to cut the road open for us. That's his primary function. He has cut the road open for us, Iqbal. Iqbal called for a reconstruction of religious thought in Islam. No one has responded to that call better than my teacher, Maulana Dr. Muhammad Fazlur Rahman Ansari, who wrote the 2-volume books, The Quranic Foundations and Structure of Muslim Society, which we have at the back of the hall. And I have benefited from my teacher, Maulana Fazlur Rahman Ansari, and I'm now teaching these young ones. Okay? So that is where the future lies, inshallah.
Sheikh, do you want to take question and answers now? About 7:30.
Yes, go ahead. I can't say no to Kaisar.
Can I ask a question? Yeah, brother. Assalamu alaikum. Respected Sheikh and all the brothers. It's a pleasure to meet you from the heart. They say Imam al-Ghazali said,
you'll have to tell me what he's saying.
You have to speak a bit louder. Imam al-Ghazali also said that if you speak from the heart, then it will hit the heart of the people. And if you speak from the lips, say lip service, just a lip or rhetoric, like the politicians of the New World Order, then it just hits the ears, maybe it bounces off. So I wanted to say Jazakallah for welcome, because you're our guest in Bradford. Lots of brothers here, sisters I've worked with over the years. We produced a film, I don't know if you remember, way back in the year 2000, we produced a video and a CD called it was one eye in the pyramid. It was called Dajjal from the shadows, exposing the new world order.
MashaAllah,
I am
MashaAllah,
the copyright holder. I was part of the team, but I used to keep
MashaAllah,
in the London studios for Halaqa Media.
MashaAllah.
So
I'm happy to hear that,
I am
yeah.
part of that team, and I'm going to launch it together with your blessing.
MashaAllah, yes.
The video is only 60 minutes. It's called the Truth Documentary.
Okay. MashaAllah, yes. Okay.
And you're doing that, mashallah.
Alhamdulillah.
If we're not here physically separated, I know you're in Trinidad and you're busy, but we never forget the power of our dua, honest dua. So I'm going to launch that, and you have been the motivating factor recently. Also, I'm with the Sajid and also with the students of Dawood Musa, who was an English convert. We buried him with a very respected janaza on the 10th of December, 2020. Pitcock died.
Yes, he was in touch with me by email.
Now, I'm part of the Islamic Party of Britain. When he stood up for the election, there was a space at that time, around 1990. So we launched the Radio Ramadan in Bradford. First ever Radio Ramadan in England was Bradford Subhana.
Okay.
There's a lot of potential here in multi-faith Bradford. So I just want to say we still got hope. We're never going to give up. While this heart's ticking, we're not giving up. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Allah is surely with those who do good deeds.
MashaAllah.
So I want to say we want to carry on. If you're here tomorrow, I would like to gift you the first DVD.
I will be here tomorrow, inshallah.
It's on DVD and
Okay.
video and VHS. Those are the
All right,
But
inshallah.
we're going to launch it, and then I want your permission to link with your lectures are upcoming. You're like the True News. You're like the True News studio. And, may Allah give you continued, all of us.
Ameen.
Help and guidance. And one little question. In one of the newspapers called The Light, we're working with Interfaith, and we're working with lots of Christians and Jews, and the Quran does say that the Christians will, at the time of end of time, like you mentioned, maybe Russia, the Orthodox Christians, will come and support the Muslims in alliance or allegiance. In 1965, a book was published by S. Ali Akbar, Welsh convert Muslim. I own that book. There's only one left, and many people have got it in home. I'm going to bring that tomorrow. I wish I could give you a copy. In 1965, one chapter is on Juj of Juj, and he says Slav Teutonics, European nations, based on the Hadith and the Quran, Surah Kaf. I don't know if you've come across that book. It's called Israel and the Prophecies of the Holy Quran.
Yes, I know the book.
Yeah, you can't get it anymore, so I'm going to try to get some sponsorship to reprint it.
I have the book, yeah.
Yeah, because you can't get it anymore. And Israel and the Jews and the New World Order really wanted that book to be banned. And really they should have banned Rushdie's satanic voices. Remember? Verses, sorry. So I want to bring that book, and I'm going to, and also I have also wanted to ask you, in one of the pages of the Light newspaper 4 or 5 months ago, they showed the truth of Gaddafi. Is it true that Gaddafi was setting up a Muslim African United Nation? Is it true? I mean, we don't know what the truth is these days. This is another study of these days. There's so many newspapers, so many writers, so many speakers. Where is the truth? So there's so many liars. The Arabic says Gaddafi. So all I'm asking is it true that Gaddafi was killed because he refused the dollar? Incidentally, with Venezuela and Saddam Hussein refused the dollar, and Russia now refused the dollar. But is it true that Gaddafi set up an Islamic system of gold dinar? Did he really produce that gold dinar? I've also read that he employed so many Africans to unite as a united Muslim, United Nations. In other words, the Quran says, Ummah is the list. Is it true that why he was really killed? And that when people were in Gaddafi's time, found out from Lebanese people from Libya, that they were having a comfort time. He had a widow fund. If you got married, he used to send you with a grant to do your Hajj and Umrah. When you got married, they sent you to get married.
Okay.
So that's my question on that side.
All right. Okay, sir, I want you to come here and monitor this session now. Yeah. I will speak about Gaddafi alone because this is what I was informed about. I have never been to Libya. But I was told that Gaddafi ordered all the Libyan gold to come back to Libya. He had it all there in Libya. And he was in negotiations with all the countries of Africa to create a new monetary system for Africa, which would take the French franc out of its ruling position, yeah. All right, go ahead.
You have said gold and silver currency is uncorruptible. However, in this very country, King Henry VIII did something known as the Great Debasement, where he took a copper coin and he put the silver over it. Eventually, people found out and it led to hyperinflation in this country. Same in the Roman Empire, the crisis of the 3rd century occurred due to the same reason, where silver coins, the silver content was taken out and replaced more and more with bronze or copper or some other coins.
I did say to you that in our market we would have the offices, the police officers, which will do two things, which will measure the weight of a coin and determine the purity of the coin. I should have said to you that the Ottoman Empire was excelled in this. And the last free and fair market that mankind had experienced on the face of this earth was the market of the Ottoman Empire. So if we are to bring back Dinar and Dirham to Pakistan, for example, we'll have to ensure that in the market there are those who can measure the weight of a coin and measure the purity of a coin. And when you find people trying to scam people, they should be punished. And one of the punishments is if you steal a kilogram of, now today they call it VIP mango. 150 rupees a kilo. But if you go to Jhelum, you get 100 rupees. Not Jhelum, sorry, Jhang. If you steal a kilogram of mangoes, we're not going to cut off your hand for that. But if you steal something worth 1 dinar, we cut off your hand for that. Punishment is of 3 kinds. There's that punishment which is reformatory. We're punishing you to try to bring you back on the right path. And there's that punishment which is retributive. You hit me, I have the right to hit you back. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a nose for a nose. But there's also in the Quran that punishment which is deterrent punishment. That we're punishing you, among other things, so that nobody else will do what you did. And that is why when you cut off the hand of the thief, some prime ministers will be walking around with no hands. Some former prime ministers will be walking around with no hands. When you cut off the hand of the thief, the market will soon become a free and a fair market, yes.
Anybody else?
You said Russia will survive. I'm not disputing that, but I'm just thinking back in history when there was USSR. It's my personal view. They use us Muslims to fight in Afghanistan, and then they use their own other mechanism to destroy USSR, to break it into pieces. Do you think Russia is strong enough to stand up? Because to me it seems like a waiting game now. They're dragging it on now, the Ukraine and the Russia.
You should study the Quran. And when you study the Quran, you will know what Allah has said in the Quran about that part of the world in which Russia is doing. I don't have the time now to do that lecture, okay?
Just some hints.
But you'll find at the back, Constantinople in the Quran is at the back. And Constantinople in the Quran will give you an idea of what does the Quran have to say about that part of the world in which Russia is located. Yes, next?
Just going back to the context of the subject we had today, in the modern world economy in which we live, you know, online trading, online purchasing, you know, millions and millions of currency being exchanged all around the world at this switch of a button. Is our model very much compatible with today's world in which we live?
Watch to see if Poland intervenes in Ukraine, which is likely. Might happen many times. Russia has already declared we will respond instantly and powerfully. And when Russia does that, you're on the way to the Great War. Before the Great War takes place, they will shut down the internet. So goodbye to online trading. Goodbye to electronic mail. All right? The entire internet will be shut down. So we have no way to communicate with each other except when we meet each other. Or you send a letter. That's why I'm making this tour at this time, because it may happen even while I'm traveling. Okay? How do you prepare for that day? The most important thing of all to do in preparation is to banish the fear of death from your heart. If you banish the fear of death from your heart, you can continue to function rationally. You can continue to take decisions which are sensible and rational. But if the fear of death seizes your heart, you'll be very irresponsible in the way you respond. There's much more to say to you, but this is enough.
Anybody else on that side? Bring Zaid.
No, what the question I would ask was one of the questions that I proposed for this subject.
Yeah.
Go.
There seems scholars that mention that there's no riba with paper notes. Is that a correct view?
There's no riba with paper notes.
With the cash, paper notes, currency notes. There's no riba involved with that.
A man came to the market, and while he was coming to the market, he had a truckload of mangoes. And someone met him outside the market and bought the whole truckload of mangoes for him. When he entered into the market, he discovered that he could have gotten a better price in the market. The Prophet said that's riba. A transaction based on deception, which yields or delivers a gain or a profit or an advantage to which one is not justly entitled. Do I have to spell it out that paper money is riba? Do you know what riba has done, this paper money has done to the world? If there are economic refugees from all over the world flooding into the West, as never before in history, it is this reason. This is the reason. Because of the monetary system and the banking system. It's a scheme to rip you off. It is legalized theft. So it is riba with a capital R.
Sheikh, you mentioned that, and also I've experienced that there's not many other scholars who talk about the things that you talk about and explain things the way that you explain them about our current times. I'm worried that for whatever reason, if you ever do stop giving your lectures, who's going to carry that on? Like you said, you have got students. But my question is there anyone that you know of who shares your views that might be in a similar position to yourself?
What we have done is we've established an online institute of Islamic eschatology, and these are my students in Pakistan. I have an assistant in Singapore who is helping me teaching. He doesn't have the background in economics and politics that I have, but he's young. And I have Mutahir here, I have Imam Isa Wood here, I have many others who all have the potential to grow, inshallah. I was very lucky that I had Maulana Muhammad Fadlur Rahman Ansari as my teacher, who gave me the proper methodology for study of that. That's the difference between me and the Darul Uloom. And that graduating from that institute in Pakistan, I also did philosophy at Karachi University, a master's degree. And then when I returned to Trinidad, I applied for a job in the foreign ministry. And they interviewed me. And they said, yes, we'd like to have you, but we have to go back to university. So they sent me back to university to study international relations. And I studied it at 2 universities before returning to work as a foreign service officer in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for 5 years. So the background that I had, this versatile scholarship of Islamic studies and philosophy and international relations blended together nicely for me to be able to pioneer Islamic eschatology. It's very rare to get this combination in a scholar, yes, very rare. So my books will remain when I die. I'll teach with my books, inshallah, yes. Yes.
Just add to this.
On that topic,
he will decide. We have a certain discipline now. You don't speak until you are allowed to speak, yeah.
Brother mentioned about security. We set up that somebody called Dirham and Dinar. We set up that as a sunnah currency to company just to preserve the money for the Muslims. Because as the brothers mentioned about security, inshallah, we tried to set up a monetary council where we're going to try and look at the test security of the dirhams and dinars with the measurements and the weights, inshallah.
Is that a Bradford accent or a Manchester accent? Huh?
Blackburn.
Blackburn. Tell me what he said.
So we're trying to. So with the
He'll tell me. He'll tell me.
He's saying that they're setting up an organization that's going to test the coins for the purity and the weight.
Basically, you can invest your money into dinar and dirham, and also have a purity thing where nobody's getting ripped off.
Will they come for the certificate?
yeah, we'll have certificates with them. And then we'll set the council where you would be able to send your check purity.
So you'll be able to send your coin there and they'll check the purity?
The ones that we sell will
Our civilization has already done this, because we use gold and silver as money for 1,000 years or more. So we had scholars who had this knowledge. We have one in Cape Town in South Africa who's attached to me. He has a deep knowledge of this subject, okay? The knowledge of how you measure the purity of a coin as well as the weight of a coin, yeah.
Anybody else?
Yes. Brother, the Zionist banking system will obviously be established. So Sheikh obviously says about it will control everyone's money. Will they also control the Russian and the Chinese money as well? What do you mean?
Could you just repeat that once more?
So the Zionist system, once it establishes the central banking system, will it also control over the Russian?
The central banking system, do they have control over the financial system of Russia and China?
I have discovered that the Russians don't have control over their own central bank. Yeah, the Zionists have done their work so skillfully that they were able to seize something in the Russian central bank, yeah. I don't know how much Russia's central bank is owned now by Russia itself. I don't know about the subject. But this is what they do. I don't know about the Pakistan Central Bank, the National Bank of Pakistan. I know that you cannot be appointed as governor unless you are approved by the IMF. Unless you are approved by the IMF, you cannot be appointed as governor of the Central Bank of Pakistan. Hmm? Yeah.
Next question, please. Go on, brother.
Sheikh Imran, could you were mentioning about some students in Bradford, Yorkshire, and we really appreciate you from so far away. I wanted to ask you, could you give us your blessing as the Holy Quran, and it's a reminder to myself first, the Holy Quran says that Muslims should be like a brick structure, Bunyan Masood, and the love and respect we know from the history of the Prophet and Sahaba, the Ummah was, we had an Ummah united. Could you give us your blessing today that we can network together, we can network, because we're here now. There's so many businesses here that are strangers, but we want to be intent, we're Muslims, we want to work together. Would you give us your blessing and we can set something up in Bradford or Yorkshire with yourself?
Okay.
That's my honest...
He wants to set up some networking organization between himself.
I have some good news. Are we still recording? Yeah. I have some good news, and that is that the change in government in Pakistan is helping me, because I can't visit Pakistan now. No. And I'm calling a spade, even up to the Chief of Staff of the Pakistan Armed Forces. So I can't visit Pakistan. So now I was planning to be in Pakistan January, February, March, April next year. But now something else has appeared. So we got 8 acres of land in Trinidad by a river. And the river has only 1 mile to the sea. So the salt water comes up the river. And I have someone who is prepared to invest. So I will own 20%, he will own 80%. And we're going to build a lake. So we need a marine engineer to help us. And the water for the lake must come from underground, clean, pure water, and fill that lake with fish. And then we're going to build huts around the lake. Wooden huts, beautiful wooden huts, inshallah. May Allah help us to do it. Money is not a problem, it's getting the proper contractor. Some huts will be a studio, some huts will be 1 bedroom, and a few might be 2 bedrooms. And then we'll also have a big hall. And when this is built, the Bismillah will be a 1-week course of lectures. Single women and families will stay in the huts. And single men will sleep on mattresses on the floor in the hall. Those who are in the huts will do your own cooking. And the men, we get a cook to cook for them. And we'll have a 1-week course to begin. But later on, we can get the specialists on international monetary economics and finance. And we have the accommodation, we have the meals, we have everything in place, inshallah. And we can spend a week, we can spend more than that, with a meeting of minds to deal with these critically important subjects. And we have a relaxed atmosphere in Trinidad. The government is not going to be sending special branch to harass us. Okay? So this is good news. So when I go back to Trinidad at the end of August, I'm not going to travel again until we complete this project, inshallah. Yeah.
You need any help on investments or anything like that? We can always help.
We don't need money. We don't need money. We have someone who's willing to invest. What we need is a good marine engineer for building the lake, and then a good contractor who can build the huts beautifully, beautiful huts, okay? And when we are not using these facilities for teaching, it becomes a resort. And people can come and rent a hut for the day, but you must vacate by 6 o'clock. You can go swimming in the lake. You can go fishing in the lake. Your children can go boating in the lake. And in addition to that, you have the river just boarding to the land. You can take a boat and go down the river to the sea and all of these things. So it'll be a very nice, very beautiful place when we finish this project. I just pray that Allah may give me life to finish this project. And then people can come to Trinidad and we can have a session dealing with this subject, yes, for 1 week. And you can all come and meet with me. We have a sharing of minds, inshallah.
Any more questions?
Two questions. One from the follow-up. You know, when you gave a little bit background of how you got into this subject with your teacher as well. What was your inspiration? It's good, you know, you are doing the subject. I'm really please, we have found somebody like you.
How did I get into this subject of money?
What was your inspiration?
Inspiration.
When I went to the Institute of International Relations in Trinidad, that's a training to be a diplomat. This was an exclusive institute with only graduates from universities, most of them already working in foreign ministries, and a small group, about 23. The institute was established by the Graduate Institute in Geneva, and they were running the institute for several years. But the year that I entered, local people took over. And the man who was the director of the institute, he was an atom bomb. Oh yes. His name was Professor Leslie Manigat. And he was anti-systemic in his thinking. And when I sat down in the classroom listening to this man, he set me on fire with his analysis, political analysis, economic analysis that was flowing from, and every class lasted 2 hours. I couldn't get a better man to teach me. He was a graduate from the Sorbonne. And the class was looking down at me because I'm a Pakistan graduate. And he wants to be a mullah. What is a mullah doing here? At the end of the year, I came first in the class. And I got another scholarship to go to Geneva. But Geneva was hardly exciting. When I went into the classroom of international economics, and this includes monetary economics, I was clashing with my teacher so often that he eventually said to me, he pulled me aside and spoke to me. He says, Mr. Hosein, you don't have to attend my class, you know. Just write the exam at the end of the year. He couldn't tolerate the challenge I was offering. How could I challenge this man, who is a professor of international economics? The reason why I could do it is because I had the Quran. And I had the capacity how to study the Quran, to apply it to the world today, which is what the Darul Uloom is lacking, significantly lacking. That made the difference. And that's how I was taking on this road today, that I can speak on the subject of money. All right, it's already 8 o'clock, and we have the books at the back. So bring them to me and I can autograph them for you, but please write your name on a piece of paper. Okay? Right.
Thank you.
Can someone take these books for me at the back? Isa?
Sheikh, what would you highly recommend what we should be investing in at the current time?
What should we be investing in?
Yeah, in current times.
Invest in land, invest in animals. You will not go wrong. Land and animals.
Sell them on eat.
Land and animals, yes.
What about silver and gold?
The people are leaving the countryside and they're flocking to the city. So land will be cheaper in the countryside. Okay? So you invest in land and in animals. That's what our Prophet said. Land and animals. MashaAllah, MashaAllah. Muhammad, how are you? Good to see you, yes, yes. After a long time.
Long time no see, Sheikh.
Yes, yes, yes. Walaikum salam, yes, mashallah. Walaikum salam, yes, how are you? Yeah. All right. Tomorrow here, sir. Tomorrow here. Walaikum salam, how are you? All right, mashallah.
Tomorrow as well?
Yes, mashallah, how are you?
Tomorrow as well, yeah, inshallah.
Have you visited a place called Gilgit?
Gilgit.